Success is not an event you attend. It's not the confetti moment, the headline, the graduation, or the champagne toast. It's not the deal closed, the finish line crossed, or the crowd applauding. Success is not a destination. It never was. It never will be. Success is a lifestyle. It is a frequency, a vibration you choose to align with every day, not once, not when it's easy, not only when it's obvious, but especially when it's silent, especially when no one is watching, especially when the reward hasn't yet arrived. Because success isn't about having more. It's about becoming more, becoming a person of intention, becoming a soul of structure, becoming someone who doesn't just chase a dream, but who lives as if the dream already lives inside them. Most people wait for success to crown them, but those who understand, they know success does not crown. It responds. It reflects. It becomes the echo of your decisions, the mirror of your disciplines, the fruit of your inner alignment. You don't earn success by reaching a moment. You earn it by living in a mode. It starts with mindset, because your mindset is the soil, and success only grows in fertile ground. You cannot plant the seeds of discipline in a mind poisoned by doubt. You cannot nurture the habits of excellence in a field flooded with excuses. You must till the ground, clean it, purify it. Remove the weeds of comparison, jealousy, and self-pity. And then, only then, can you plant the roots of mastery. The mindset of success is not one of arrogance. It is one of authorship. You stop being a character in your story, and you pick up the pen. You stop waiting for the plot to twist, and you write the next chapter. You stop reacting, and you begin creating. Most people build their lives like tourists, take the path of least resistance, snap photos of progress, and head home before the real journey begins. But success requires that you become a settler, that you build, that you stay, that you endure the seasons and claim the land of your own potential, not with flags, but with habits. Because a mind without structure becomes a slave to every whisper, and there will be whispers. Every day, they will tell you to slow down, to give up, to do it later, to settle for less. And that is where belief comes in. Belief is the backbone of a lifestyle. Without it, discipline dies in the dark. Belief says, I know what I can't see yet. It says, this pain has a place. It says, this path has power, even when it feels pointless. Belief is not optimism. It is obedience to a deeper truth. And to believe is to fight not with fists, but with focus. Because the enemy is always internal first. Doubt, fear, apathy, laziness. And when you live from belief, you don't need to crush these voices. You simply outgrow them. You raise your standard until those voices feel foreign. You elevate your actions until those habits no longer fit. You walk into the future with such deliberate energy that the past cannot follow. And when belief burns long enough, it gives way to clarity. Clarity, the sharpness of vision, the shedding of noise, the end of negotiation with mediocrity. Clarity says, I no longer do everything. I do the essential. It says, I no longer live for approval. I live for alignment. It says, if it doesn't serve the vision, it doesn't stay in the system. Clarity isn't about knowing every step. It's about knowing the direction. Clarity doesn't erase obstacles. It just makes them irrelevant. Because when you are clear on who you are becoming, you stop being afraid of what might go wrong. You stop asking, what if I fail? And start asking, what if I don't? What if I don't try? What if I don't grow? What if I don't answer the call? That's when the lifestyle begins to take root. Not when you have all the answers, but when your why becomes louder than your worry. Vision begins to breathe, not as a wish, but as a map. Vision is not fantasy. Vision is focus with a future. It is the eyes of your soul looking forward, not to escape the present, but to give it meaning. Vision says, I know what I'm building. And because I know what I'm building, I know what to ignore. Distraction dies when vision comes alive. Temptation loses its grip when vision gains ground. You stop flirting with comfort because you're building a cathedral and you don't have time for comfort when you're carving out greatness. That vision becomes your fuel. It lights the way when the road gets dim. It holds your gaze when life throws dust in your face. It becomes your lighthouse in the fog of fatigue and failure. And once you are anchored in vision, purpose enters the room. Purpose enters the room like a king returning to his throne. Not loud, not rushed, just undeniable. Because once vision sharpens, purpose becomes magnetic. You don't find purpose by thinking harder, you discover it by living deeper. By listening to the pull that won't leave you alone. The itch in your soul that says, there's more, not more money, not more applause, more alignment, more impact, more meaning. Purpose is not a task, it's a truth. It's not something you do, it's something you embody. And once you carry that purpose, the weight of the world begins to shift. Life gets heavier, but you get stronger. You begin to see problems as invitations, not punishments. You begin to see resistance as refinement. You begin to understand that your purpose is not what you do once you've succeeded. Your purpose is what makes you worthy of success. That is the shift. The broke man chases success to find purpose. The wise man finds purpose and lets success chase him. Because purpose builds discipline. And discipline is where the work becomes sacred. Discipline is not punishment. It is praise. It is devotion to something bigger than impulse. It is the muscle that moves in spite of mood. The undisciplined wait for the right moment. The disciplined create it. The undisciplined pray for momentum. The disciplined become momentum. And in a world addicted to speed, the disciplined play the long game. They are not impressed by quick wins or flashy metrics. They are married to mastery. Mastery of the small. Mastery of the dull. Mastery of the necessary. Because when success is a lifestyle, your disciplines are not acts of willpower, they are acts of worship. The repetition becomes a ritual. The effort becomes your expression. And in that space, you don't work harder, you work holier. Because you understand the goal is not to arrive, the goal is to align. And alignment gives birth to action. Pure, powerful, precise action. Not busy work, not chaos disguised as hustle. Action that is rooted in clarity and born from belief. Action that says, I am not trying to impress, I am trying to build. I am not here to prove, I am here to produce. I am not asking for attention, I am answering my calling. And because your actions are anchored, you don't need a crowd to validate your direction. You move with inner certainty. You act with quiet intensity. You get up, you do the work, you finish the task. Even when it's boring, especially when it's boring, because the boring builds you. Anyone can act when it's exciting. But those who live in the lifestyle of success, they move when it's mundane. They execute when the music stops. They show up when no one else does. Because they're not doing it for show. They're doing it because that's who they are now. And that is when the success begins to compound. Not in big leaps, not in viral moments, but in silent stacked wins. The cold shower, the extra set, the hard conversation, the early morning, the email sent, the plan reviewed, the reading done, the time protected. These are not tasks, these are bricks. Bricks that build the lifestyle, brick by brick, day by day, breath by breath. And as the walls rise, you begin to feel something new. A quiet power that wasn't there before. Gratitude, not just for what you have, but for who you are becoming. Gratitude for the process. Gratitude for the pressure. Gratitude even for the pain, because you now understand it's all part of the shaping. Gratitude doesn't make you soft. It makes you stable. It keeps you grounded when results tempt you to get arrogant. It keeps you hopeful when struggle tempts you to get bitter. Gratitude is what keeps your heart clean. It lets you move fast without losing soul. It lets you chase goals without becoming a ghost. Because gratitude reminds you that success is not something out there. It's something in here, a frequency you can tune into, a current you can surf, a code you can live by. And when you live by that code with belief, clarity, vision, purpose, discipline, action, and gratitude, you become something rare. You become adaptable. I'll continue the flow next with adaptability, resilience, learning, and the climactic emotional conclusion, all in seamless style. Adaptability is your proof that success lives in you, not outside of you. Because life will shift, the plan will break, the strategy will fail, but you remain. Because you've trained not to depend on conditions, but on conviction. You've trained to pivot, not panic, to flex, not fracture. Adaptability doesn't mean you abandon your purpose. It means you find new paths to honor it. It means when one door shuts, you don't wait for someone to open it. You look for a window. And if there's no window, you carve a door through the wall. Success isn't about who's smartest. It's about who stays in motion, who keeps moving when the map catches fire, who keeps solving when the answers disappear, who keeps creating when the system collapses. That's adaptability. And when it's paired with resilience, now you're unstoppable. Resilience is not survival. It is reinvention. It is the willingness to rise, not just once, but every time. Every failure you own becomes firewood. Every scar becomes armor. Every loss becomes language for the next lesson. Because resilience is not built by winning, it's built by returning. Returning to the path when you've been knocked off. Returning to the vision when the fog sets in. Returning to yourself when the world tried to steal your voice. And every time you return, your character grows deeper. Your foundation grows wider. Your movement becomes more unshakable. Because now, you're not chasing success. You are success in motion. And that's the highest level. To live as the embodiment of the thing you once only imagined. But to maintain that, to keep that lifestyle alive, you must never stop learning. Success demands evolution. And evolution demands humility. You must learn faster than the world changes. You must listen deeper than the noise shouts. You must grow smarter than your ego. Because the moment you think you know it all, you lose it all. But when you stay a student, always a student, the world becomes your classroom. Failure becomes your curriculum. Criticism becomes your feedback. Mistakes become your blueprint. And life becomes a constant unveiling of deeper truth. Learning keeps your success alive. Because learning keeps you alive. It protects you from stagnation. It shields you from arrogance. It opens doors no degree ever could. And over time, all these elements, mindset, belief, clarity, vision, purpose, discipline, action, gratitude, adaptability, resilience, learning begin to flow together. They harmonize. They create the frequency of a life that doesn't chase fulfillment but radiates it. A life that is not lived to impress but to express. A life that does not seek validation but creates value. A life that does not wait for success because it walks in it daily. And that is the final truth. Success is not somewhere you arrive. It is something you become. It is not a destination. It is a decision. A daily, deliberate, disciplined decision. To rise when you're tired. To show up when you're scared. To act when you're uncertain. To give when you're unseen. To believe when the world says doubt. To keep going when the results say quit. To build when it's boring. To trust when it's tough. To live in such a way that every moment becomes sacred, not because of what you achieve, but because of how you show up. Success is not what happens when the world changes. It's what happens when you change. When you become the kind of person success cannot ignore. When your habits preach louder than your hype. When your energy shifts every room you enter, not because you need attention, but because you are aligned. That is success. That is the lifestyle. That is the way. And if you choose it fully, fiercely, faithfully, you will never have to chase it again. Because it will live in your breath, in your eyes, in your posture, in your patterns, in your presence. And one day when the world asks you, how did you do it? What was your secret? How did you reach that level? You'll smile and you'll say, I didn't reach it. I became it. Success, when fully embraced as a lifestyle, becomes less about achieving and more about embodying. It's no longer about what you gain. It's about what you give up to stay in alignment with who you've chosen to be. You give up distractions. You give up comfort disguised as rest. You give up approval from those who don't understand your fire. You give up the version of you who waits for life to feel easy. Because you understand now, ease is the enemy of evolution. Success is not meant to be easy. It is meant to be earned not once, but every single day through the way you live, the way you speak, the way you serve. It becomes the way you walk into a room. It becomes the way you treat others when no one is watching. It becomes how you respond when tested not just in business, but in character. You begin to realize success is about energy. The energy you bring into conversations, the energy you bring into decisions, the energy you carry, even in silence. Because when you live in alignment, your presence preaches louder than your words ever could. You don't need to convince anyone anymore. Your life speaks. It speaks in how consistent you are with your values. It speaks in how deeply you listen to others. It speaks in how willing you are to go the extra mile with no promise of praise. Because you understand the prize is not the praise. The prize is the person you become by honoring your code. And the code, it's written in how you handle the moments no one claps for. Success as a lifestyle means showing up when the stage is empty, when the lights are off, when there's no external reward, only internal respect. Because the true reward is self-respect. To look in the mirror and say, I kept the promise. Not to the world, not to the market, not to an audience, to yourself. Because when you no longer break promises to yourself, you become unstoppable. Not loud, not arrogant, but undeniable. You begin to understand that excellence is not the goal, it's the standard. And that standard follows you everywhere, not just in your business, not just in your fitness, not just in your performance. It follows you into your relationships, into your parenting, into your solitude, into your stillness. Because true success doesn't just show up on the scoreboard, it shows up in your spirit. It's who you are when the world gets dark, when things fall apart, when storms rage. It's the calm in your eyes that says, I've trained for this. Because you have. You've trained by choosing the hard thing. You've trained by delaying gratification. You've trained by not needing to be seen to keep sowing. That training, that lifestyle, it creates an edge that the undisciplined can't fake. You move with a different rhythm. You carry a different gravity. People feel it. They may not be able to describe it, but they feel it. They feel the intensity of someone who chooses their life instead of just tolerating it. They feel the presence of someone who doesn't chase peace because they walk in it. And peace, real peace, is not the absence of problems. It's the presence of purpose. Peace doesn't mean everything's perfect. It means you're perfectly aligned in the midst of imperfection. And from that alignment flows power. Not power over others, but power over yourself. The power to say no when temptation knocks. The power to walk away from things that don't serve your higher self. The power to be misunderstood and still not flinch. The power to know who you are without needing the world to agree. This is what makes success sacred. Because now it's not just what you do. It's how you are. And how you are becomes how you lead. Because make no mistake, success lived out loud is leadership. You don't need a title. You don't need a platform. You don't need followers. You lead by example. You lead by consistency. You lead by the way you live. And your life, your real, raw, daily life, becomes the sermon people remember long after they forget your words. That's what happens when success becomes your lifestyle. You don't live for the applause anymore. You live for the alignment. And that alignment makes you magnetic. I will continue this exact rhythm and voice, and we will go deeper into legacy, identity, joy, and the eternity of lifestyle-built success. Because when you live in alignment long enough, your life stops echoing trends and starts building legacy. Legacy isn't built in moments. It's built in momentum. It's the result of 1,000 ordinary choices made with extraordinary consistency. Legacy is the lifestyle made eternal. It's not about what people say at your funeral. It's about what your name whispers when you're not in the room. Does your name stand for excellence? Does it stand for service? Does it stand for truth, courage, and presence? Or does it dissolve in mediocrity? That is why success must be a lifestyle, because moments fade, but patterns last. And the pattern of how you lived, that is what echoes. Legacy is not what you leave behind. It's what you plant forward. The energy you instilled in your children, the discipline you demonstrated for your team, the character you carved into the culture around you. That is what will outlive you. Not your followers, not your numbers, not your portfolio, but your example. And your example is born from the lifestyle you choose when no one is looking. Every day, with or without validation. Every day, whether it's clear or confusing. Every day, whether you feel like it or not. Because when success becomes your lifestyle, identity is no longer a mystery. It's embodied. You don't need to find yourself. You forge yourself. You don't need to search for confidence. You become confidence by keeping your word, by walking in truth, by living with structure. And that structure, that becomes your protection. In a world trying to pull you in every direction, your discipline becomes your compass. Your morning becomes your anchor. Your habits become your sanctuary. Because the world can spin in chaos, but you remain unshaken. You wake up and move forward. You serve. You build. You sharpen. You stay grounded. Not because it's easy, but because it's who you are now. And when that becomes your identity, when success flows not from your wins, but from your ways, something even greater begins to rise. Joy. Not hype, not adrenaline, not the high of a win, but real, grounded, permanent joy. Joy is the rarest currency of the successful. It cannot be faked. It cannot be bought. It cannot be manufactured in a moment of achievement. It is grown in the soil of daily integrity. Joy comes from knowing you're walking your path with courage. Joy comes from realizing you no longer chase fulfillment. You carry it. Joy comes from the deep inner peace that says, if no one ever sees me, if no one ever claps, if I never go viral, I'm still rich. Rich in soul, rich in discipline, rich in legacy, rich in identity. That's the joy of a success-driven life, not the destination joy, the ongoing joy. The kind of joy that sings even in storms. The kind of joy that dances in disappointment. The kind of joy that says, yes, this is hard, but I'm built for this. I chose this, and I'm grateful I did. Because once you understand that success is not something you reach, but someone you become, everything changes. You stop sprinting for approval. You slow down for alignment. You stop reaching for validation. You reach deeper into values. You stop fearing failure, because even your failure becomes sacred. Even your breakdowns become breakthroughs. Even your delays become divine redirection. That's the power of living success as a lifestyle. You are no longer afraid of losing because you can't lose what you've become. No one can take your mindset. No one can steal your clarity. No one can reverse your resilience. You own this, and you own it every single day you decide to. So decide again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. Because this lifestyle, it's not a sprint. It's a vow. It's a sacred commitment to live awake, live intentional, and live legendary. Because to live legendary is not to seek spotlight. It is to live in such a way that even shadows are transformed by your presence. To live legendary is to make the ordinary holy. To answer emails with presence. To shake hands with integrity. To breathe deep in conflict and still speak with compassion. To turn every moment into a message that says, this is who I am, this is what I stand for, and this is how I move, not because I'm trying to impress, but because I've made a decision. A decision that's bigger than ambition. A decision that outlasts feelings. A decision that defies trends, ignores noise, and builds quietly in the background until one day the background becomes the foundation the world stands on. Because legacy isn't loud, it's lasting. It doesn't scream, it stays. It lingers in the habits you model. It echoes in the decisions you make when nobody's watching. It lives in the energy you give when no one gives it back. And the beauty of it all is this. You don't have to wait to live this way. You don't have to be rich. You don't have to be famous. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to choose. To stop living by default. To stop letting the algorithm design your attention. To stop letting other people's confusion set your compass. And instead to own it. Own your morning. Own your focus. Own your mission. Own your voice. Own your standard. Live like it all counts. Because it does. Live like every choice is a vote for your future. Because it is. Live like your children will remember what you did in private because they will. Live like someone is watching, not to judge, but to learn how it's done. Live like the world doesn't need another influencer. It needs another example. An example of someone who didn't quit. An example of someone who didn't compromise. An example of someone who built their life one breath at a time, not for applause, not for awards, but for alignment with a truth so deep it couldn't be ignored. That's what happens when you live success as a lifestyle. You no longer chase moments. You become the moment. Every room you walk into becomes sharper. Every conversation you have becomes richer. Every project you touch becomes more excellent, not because you're perfect, but because you're present. Present with your power. Present with your purpose. Present with the quiet thunder of someone who knows I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Not because life is easy, not because you've won every round, but because you stayed in the arena. You stayed through the dark. You stayed through the delay. You stayed through the doubt. You stayed. And in a world that constantly runs, constantly shifts, constantly escapes, to stay is revolutionary. To stay grounded. To stay focused, to stay grateful, to stay humble, to stay in alignment. That is the essence of this life you are building. So let the world chase titles. Let others obsess over optics. You walk with truth. You build with honor. You live with fire. Because the reward isn't out there. It's in you. In the strength of your discipline. In the depth of your vision, in the consistency of your standards, and in the silence that follows when you know you didn't just visit success. You didn't just taste it. You became it. And now you live it daily, deliberately, unapologetically, because success is no longer something you chase. Success is who you are.